All right, great. We're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome, everyone. We're so glad that so many people from our partner academic institutions are joining us today for this webinar on your partnership with OUP. Some of you are newer to working with us and welcome. We're really glad that you're here to learn about your partnership. Some of you are old hands, but we hope we have information today that'll be really useful to all of you throughout this webinar. So really glad you're here. And we're very thankful for your partnership, and thanks for joining us today. I'm Kirsten Loita. I'm a partner here on the University Relations side at Osage University Partners. I am joined by my two University Relations colleagues, Natasha Azar and Jamie Testai, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves just to give you some background on myself. So I've been with OUP now for almost 6 years. It's been a terrific 6 years getting to work with all of you. And I previously worked in tech transfer for almost 20 years and loved that as well. So I'm really glad that I get to continue working with the tech commercialization colleagues that we have at our academic institution partners. Natasha, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Natasha Azar. I've been with OUP almost 5 years now. So I am VP of Investor Relations and Marketing. So I lead our investor relations efforts, the marketing efforts for the firm, and also I'm on the university relations team. And on the UR team, I help develop our programs and run the programs for all of you.
Great. Thanks, Natasha. Jamie?
Hi, I'm Jamie Testai. I'm the Best Practices Manager at OUP. I've been at OUP for just a little over 2 years now, and my role really helps develop content based on the best practices at your institutions. I manage our startup license database, and I'm the one who's actively tracking and analyzing the participation rates information that you send us.
Great. Thanks, Jamie. So glad that we can all talk with everyone who's joining us today about OUP. These are actually the topics we're going to be covering today. This is obviously reflective of the description that we had for the webinar. We'll go a bit through our mission and model. We know that some of you already know this, but again, to some of you, this may be new. Then we'll talk about our partnership benefits and programs. We think this is kind of the meat of what most of you are looking for with this regards to this webinar. And then we'll also talk about our diligence process and company tracking that our investment team in particular uses when looking at the companies and how we keep track of those companies out of our partner academic institutions. So we are recording this webinar. So if you don't catch all of it, or if you have a colleague that you think could be interested in it, you will find a recording of this on the partner portal, which as the tech commercialization colleagues at our partner institutions, you will have access to our partner portal if you have not yet used our partner portal. Natasha will be talking about this later and some of the great resources that are in our partner portal. You can find this under resources webinars on the partner portal. We also will have a copy of this on our YouTube channel. And we'll be sending out the deck for today to everyone who's registered for this webinar as well. As usual with all of our webinars, we really encourage you to ask questions. We actually even put that in the title of this particular webinar. We want to answer your questions today about your partnership with us. So please use the Q&A box that is somewhere in the toolbar on your Zoom, and we'll be answering those throughout. So we'll move on then to our first subject, OUP's mission and model. So our mission at OUP is to invest in, nurture, and support spinouts that are commercializing the most exciting and groundbreaking scientific innovations that are emerging from your institutions, which are the premier research institutions in the world. We foster these partnerships in order to provide a great return for our investors. We're a venture capital fund. Obviously, we're looking for returns. But we also are looking for a great return for you as our partner academic institutions. As our partners, you potentially share in our profits. And so I'll go into more detail on this later in the webinar, but I just want to make that point to you that potentially if we invest in one of your companies, potentially you can be sharing in our profits as well. So we also help with the effectiveness of the tech commercialization operations, where most of you likely work through programs, best practices sharing, and data analyses. And there are lots of different ways that we do that. And Natasha is going to be talking about these in depth, as well as Jamie later in this webinar. And often these activities are driven by requests from our partner institutions, or that trends that we're seeing, because we work with so many of these academic institutions, trends that we're seeing across the partner institutions. In addition, we also work on improving research commercialization out of our partner institutions by helping spinouts attract funding, locate management teams, advise them on their business models, and more that our investment team would be happy to cover with you. And we'll talk about some of the ways that they can do that throughout this webinar as well. So OUP is currently on its third fund. Across our 3 funds, we've raised approximately $600 million since 2010. We have invested in over 120 university spinout companies. Of those investments, over 30 of them have IPO'd now, and around 10 of them have been successful acquisitions of our portfolio companies. So a lot of investments made, over 120 across those 3 funds, and a lot of IPOs as well. And you know that the IPO market has been just terrific the last several years. So our team, and I'm going to move on to the next page. We have a 16-member team, actually just growing actually as well. 5 of whom have PhDs and 1 MD. Here you can see in the middle or towards the right hand, this is our university relations team. We just introduced ourselves. We have our terrific finance team as well, that's tracking all of our investments that we've made, tracking the potential calculations for profit sharing, et cetera. Here we have our investment team, Mark Singer, who heads up our tech portfolio, Bill Harrington, who heads up our life science portfolio, and the terrific people that we have working with each of your institutions. And most of your institutions then have both a tech person as well as a life science person working on the analyzing the startups out of your institutions. And then we have the terrific Britt Kennett, who helps us out as well as our senior executive assistant. So that's our team. We also wanted to mention, we have a new member of our team joining in October, Mitra here. So many of you will be meeting her in the coming months as well. So a little bit about OUP and what we actually invest in. We reflect where the academic institutions we're partnered with, where they are doing research and where their startups are coming out of that deep science research that we're doing. So you can see on the life sciences side, we invest in therapeutics, devices, diagnostics, and tools, but obviously heavily concentrated on the therapeutic side. On the tech side, it runs the gamut of where people are creating startup companies at our partner institutions. So we have obviously an area here that is devoted to IT and software, but also looking at hardware, materials, semiconductors, energy, et cetera, as well. So really, if it's being invented, it's a deep science, it's a startup out of an academic institution, it's something that we're probably going to want to look at. We also, so not only do we look at all sectors, but we're also looking at all stages of investment. So this is our portfolio, most of our portfolio, I should say, and the stage that we initially invested in those companies at. So you can see we invest anywhere from seed to pre-IPO. And then we also have outlined the companies that have been exits for us here in green, as well as those that are public perhaps, but not exited yet from our portfolio. So no company, so we really want to stress that no company is too early and no company is too late for us. So please, as you're coming across companies, let us know about it. We like to know about companies early so that we can start tracking them right away in our Salesforce database. So that's a little bit on the OUP model itself. The one thing that I didn't mention, and we will talk about later in this webinar, is that our model was founded around the idea of participation rights. And we'll talk about those in depth in a few slides. So we're going to get on though with the OUP partnership benefits and programs. And this is just a slide outlining the major topics we're going to talk about with regards how we work with our academic partners. So the first is talking about that financial return potentially to our academic partners. And that was the idea behind these participation rights and those potential assignments to us of those participation rights. Then we'll talk about how we help TTOs or tech transfer offices or tech commercialization offices continuously improve so they can launch more high quality startups. Then we'll talk about our centralized management of participation rights and how that works. And then we'll just speak briefly about how we assist university spinouts. So jumping into the economic benefit, OUP was founded on the idea that it could potentially invest in startups through participation rights that the universities may have in their licenses. So we have two types of partnerships with our academic partners. Core partners sign up with us prior to the raising of each fund and pre-assign all of their participation rights in IP licenses to us. Associate partners, on the other hand, have a non-exclusive relationship with us and don't have any obligation to assign their participation rights to us. However, from both, we are looking to learn about their spinouts that are maybe possible investment opportunities for us. Due to the exclusive nature of the relationship on participation rights, core partners receive a portion of profits with us just for signing up with us for each fund. And they also receive a portion that is based on the performance of the companies in which we invest during the course of a fund. So if those companies have a profitable exit and the fund is overall profitable, they're receiving a share based on that overall profitability rate. So likewise, the associate partners also have that same portion of profit based on the performance of the companies we invest in out of their institutions during a fund. So it does take many years for a fund to be profitable. So this is not something that will recur immediately. Like we won't invest in a company 1 year and potentially the profit sharing comes back the next year, but it usually takes several years for that profit sharing then to come around. All of our partners, though, have additional benefits that we'll discuss in just a bit, but I do want to mention two other things on the economic side. Even when we do exercise a participation right, the university always has the right to co-invest with us up to 50% of that participation right. We realize that a lot of institutions these days are looking at investing more in their startups. They may have a fund to do so, or they may do so on a one-off basis. And so we always have that in all of our agreements with our partners. The other thing that we want to mention is that we don't ask for anything financial from a university. Our model involves no capital from our partner institutions in order to enter into the relationship with us. And so there's no financial risk to your academic institution. So if we don't have any questions so far, Natasha, do we have any questions?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay, great. We're then going to, I'm going to just quickly show you the slides. These are our core partners. These are our associate partners. This is a little bit of an eye chart because there are so many partners that we have and which we love. We're excited to be working with all of you. But if we don't have any other questions at this point, Natasha then is going to jump into ways that we help the tech commercialization operations we work with at the universities improve.
Great, thanks, Kirsten. So as Kirsten mentioned earlier in the presentation, OUP is mission driven to help our partners improve technology commercialization. So our firm, OUP, helps build programs specifically designed for your offices. So most VCs focus on finding investments. So university outreach might be part of their process and part of their deal sourcing, but they don't offer these programming for the technology commercialization operations. So OUP has a dedicated university relations team, which is 3 of us, managing these programs and communicating information about these programs out to all of you. And lastly, OUP has built an internal culture that puts our academic partners first, as demonstrated by our programs, which I will talk about now. So this slide, this is just a dashboard of our university relations activity in 2021 so far. It's not exhaustive of all of our programs, but it's just reflecting some data on our more frequently used resources, such as our startup license database, the partner portal membership, and new in 2021, the OUP virtual exchange, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So I'm not going to go into detail about all of our programs, but before I go into like the updates and our new programming, I just wanted to give everyone who's not familiar with OUP a brief overview on our most used resources. So the first one, first and foremost, our startup license database, which many of you will be familiar with and have used before. So OUP has been collecting startup licenses since our inception back in 2009. And we now have over 2,000 licenses that have been contributed by our core partners to this database. Any partner, though, whether you're a core partner or an associate partner, you can use this database and access this database when negotiating an individual startup license to benchmark terms against similar licenses from other universities. To use the database, you can either fill out the license database request form that's in the partner portal if you have a portal membership, or you can reach out to Jamie directly. So Jamie runs point on the license database. If you reach out to her and describe the technology, she will do a search in the license database and set up a short call with you to review the comparable terms. On our webinars, we are obviously doing a webinar right now. We've been doing webinars for 5 years now. We do webinars on industry sectors, financing trends specifically among university startups, licensing topics, and just other topics in the world of venture capital. For our seminars, our venture education seminars, these are presentations our team used to give in person when visiting your campus on various venture topics. The past year and a half, we've been providing these virtually as our team hasn't been traveling. We can give a presentation just to your technology commercialization office, or we can give it to a broader audience if you want to include faculty and researchers. If you're interested in seeing our list of topics that we can present on or setting up a presentation virtually, please reach out to me and I'll give you that list and we can set something up. And the last item on here, our virtual VC office hours. So the office hours are something our investment team used to offer in person when on campus. During the pandemic, we've continued offering office hours virtually. So Jamie just pasted in the chat a link that you could share with anyone who's interested in meeting with one of our investment team members. So this link will direct you to the right person on the investment team and basically would direct you to a link to schedule a Zoom call with them. So if there's anyone who could benefit from talking with someone on our investment team, whether it's a student or researcher about their startup idea, please feel free to share this link with them and encourage them to reach out to our team.
So we had a question, and actually I'm going to ask this of Jamie because it's about the license database. And it says, does this database only capture startup licenses and not licenses to larger corporate partners?
Yeah, so this database does only capture startup licenses. So it's either startup licenses that are licensing their first technology at our company, or sometimes on the form in the portal, you'll see existing company, and that's a startup that's licensing maybe its second or third technology from a university.
Yeah. And one thing I will mention also is that even though this database only does capture startup licenses, we find that a lot of the institutions we work with use it anyways when they're negotiating with other sizes of companies because they just want to get a general feel, what is market rate in general, perhaps just around the earned royalties or other things within the license.
Yeah, it's a piggyback off of that. So we can really narrow down the data sets in the license database. And sometimes when someone's negotiating with a larger company, they ask me to take out all the licenses that have 0% equity to see how that changes, you know, the upfront fees and some of the cash payments. So we can do that also with the database.
Yeah. there's a lot of flexibility of how we can look at the data in the database, and Jamie can work with that. We can also work, for example, she's done things where she's only looked at more recent licenses since the database goes back to 2009, or other types of things that you may want to have her see whether they affect the overall numbers. All right, seeing there are no more questions, I will move you on to the next slide, Natasha.
Great. So now I want to highlight 3 new programs or updates to programs coming up this fall. So the first is the Exchange. So the Exchange is a virtual networking and best practices event among OUP's partner institutions. You might recall, we used to host an in-person exchange at the autumn annual meeting. So we switched to a virtual format this year and relaunched the exchange virtually. And we hosted our first exchange in the spring on the topic of sublicensing best practices. So to recap that event, we had 130 participants across 2 sessions. We had a panelist or a panel set the stage for the discussion. We had several breakout groups, moderator for each breakout group, and a reporter gather all the useful information that was discussed and then report back to the larger group. We put together a document of all the best practices learned based on this event and sent it out to everyone who participated. So we're going to do this event again in the fall on the topic of patent prosecution and patent expenses. So we're again going to spread this event out across 2 different sessions. And so shortly in the next couple of weeks, you'll see an invitation for this event, and you can choose which time works for you if you wish to attend. On the slide, you can see some of the questions that we're planning for the breakout rooms to discuss during this event. So we're really looking forward to it. The last event went really well, and we encourage you to attend. Once again, we'll be looking for panelists for this topic, and then group moderators and reporters.
Great.
So the next program I'll talk about is the Partner Portal. So if you are new to OUP and you don't have an account in the Partner Portal, it is a secure online platform for academic partners, full of resources such as a licensed template library, a licensed clause library, different startup resources, open TTO positions that we curate a list for, and more. So the most significant change or update about the Partner Portal of late is that we are creating a new member type for researchers, your researchers. And so this includes PIs, faculty, postdocs, or grad students at our partner institutions. So previously, you could join the portal as someone who works in the technology commercialization office at either one of our core partners or associate partners. So at the request of some of our partners to allow researchers to create an account in the portal, we did create this member type. So as you can see on this slide, we created a section dedicated to researchers and content that is relevant to this audience. And just so everyone knows, the researchers will not be able to see some of the content that's specific to the technology commercialization officers. So nothing related to the license database, nothing in the license template library, the clause library, and nothing like that. However, as a TTO member, if you wish to look at some of the content we're putting up there for researchers, you will be able to see that. So I just wanted to highlight 3 areas of content that we created for the researchers. So in the first one on here is OUP info for researchers. So this section is meant to explain the OUP relationship, how we work with academic institutions, with information that relates to academic founders. So talking about what OUP provides to startups, how participation rights work for founders, and et cetera. We also created a section of funding opportunities for startups. So this lists out funding opportunities at all stages of development, and we segmented it into venture and pitch competitions, research partnerships, and grants, and we plan to update this list periodically. And the last section I wanted to point out is we created lists of other VCs who historically have invested in university spinouts. So if you go to that list that area of the portal now, you'll see we created a list for each of the sectors, life science and tech, of the top 20 VCs who have historically invested in the most university spinouts over the past 5 years. And so we will update this list every year to have the most recent list of VCs investing in university spinouts. There's also a subsection here just focused on tech that's listing out the top tech investors in university spinouts in just 2020. So that just that investment period.
And
so the last, oh, sorry,
go ahead, Natasha.
The last thing I wanted to mention on the portal is that we actually would love to expand the licensing resource library in the portal. So this includes both license templates and license clauses. So on this slide at the bottom, any of those areas you see listed, if you have boilerplate language that you are willing to share for inclusion in the portal, we'd love to receive it, and we'd love to post it in the portal so everyone can benefit from that resource. So if you have any language you're willing to share, please just shoot me an email.
So Natasha, I was just going to mention too that for example, the funding opportunities, we love to update these lists based on information that our partner institutions provide to us. So also feel free to send us information of things that we may have missed and we may not be aware of, et cetera. So this is really a kind of a community resource. We just happen to be hosting it, and we're always trying to add the best information for everyone. All right, so I'll move on to the startup tracker. And do you want me to stop sharing at the moment, or just let me know when?
Yeah, now is totally fine, and I'll share my screen.
Okay.
So this next program that we want to introduce to all of you is brand new, and it's very exciting. We've been working on it most of this year. So this is called the University Startup Tracker. So this is a live dashboard and list of your institution's startups that you can access, or you will be able to access at any time. And it is directly connected to our internal Salesforce database. So for many of you who have seen our deal log report, this will, and that you're accustomed to receiving us as an email attachment, this will replace that for you. So this is a live document that will provide you with direct insights into your institution's startup activity, including metrics that you might not be tracking yourself, and as well, insights into OUP's interactions with those startups. So I'm sharing with you now, this is this information is not specific to any university. These numbers are made up for the purpose of this demonstration. But this is what your dashboard would look like. And it actually keeps going down a bit further, and I'm going to just point out a few of the metrics here in a moment. So some of these metrics will look familiar if you've seen your institution's deal log report before. And for anyone who doesn't know, the deal log report is the document OUP emails to the tech transfer office in advance of a meeting where we would review all of your institution's recent startup activities. So there's a metrics section and also a list of all of your companies. The nice thing about this document is that it is updated every hour based on the latest information in our internal tracking database. It is hosted on a platform called Smartsheet. So when we do share this with you to your university email address, you will be prompted to create a Smartsheet account, which is free to create. And once you create that account, every time you log into Smartsheet, this will come up as a document that you can access at any time. So some of the metrics I just wanted to point out that are on this University Startup Tracker, but not on the deal log, are the number of jobs created by your institution's startups, the recent financing rounds that your institution startups may have had recently, startup geography, which is going to be a summary of like the top 5 cities where your startups are located. And then I'm going to scroll down a little bit further. The most recent introductions OUP made to your startups and who those introductions were made to. Companies that may have recently entered OUP's diligence process. And lastly, recent interactions. So these are companies OUP recently talked to that are affiliated with your institution. So I'm just going to scroll to the top here because I want to show you how you'll be able to see the list of your institution's startups. So at the top of your dashboard, there will be a link that says access your startups. And if you click on that, it'll take you to a different view that will actually list out every single company OUP is tracking at your institution. So this information is, it's fake information. These are not actually companies, obviously. But for the sake of this demonstration, I just wanted to show you some of the columns of the areas that we will have in this list of companies. Actually, the columns, keep going to the right here. So there is more information if you scroll to the right. So the nice thing about this is you can sort the information in any way that works for you. So you could sort the TTO column, sector column, any of these columns. And you can also filter the information in any way that works for you. So let's say I am TTO person number 1, and I only want to see my companies as a licensing officer. So you could create a filter, and I already created the filter for the sake of this demonstration. And then I'm only going to see my companies because I'm not interested in the other companies right now. So I just wanted to show you that is an option to create filters in any way that makes the most sense to you. Another nice thing about this view in Smartsheet is you can click on a company and other information will come up on the side in this details panel. So these are fields that are not one of the columns here, but just additional information that we did not use to provide before in the deal log. Another benefit of this view is there is an option to provide a comment on any company here. So let's say you see information about a company that is incorrect or out of date. Instead of waiting to have a call with OUP, you can actually write a comment down here and tag anyone on the OUP team who you want to see that comment. So for this company, let's say I wanted to tag Manny Stockman on the OUP team, and I want to tell him the CEO name is actually, whatever it is. And I would send him that comment, and he would actually receive an email at that point. So he would receive that notification from you, and then he could reply to you, which would then go into your email, and you could have a whole email exchange about a company based on what is in Smartsheet. The last thing I wanted to show in this view is that you can actually you'll be able to download all of the information in this list of companies into an Excel file, which is pretty useful. Then the last thing I'm going to show on the University Startup Tracker is I'm going to go back to the dashboard. So let's say there's a company not listed at all in Smartsheet. You can submit a new company through a separate form. That'll be a link at the top of your dashboard. So this is a really simple form that would capture all of the fields that are important to OUP to start tracking a company. And there's even an area to upload a pitch deck or a file that is maybe relevant to that company as well. Once you submit that form, we will add that company, and it should start showing up in that full list of your institution startups. So yeah, that's a short demo on the University Startup Tracker. We're planning to roll this out in the fall, so we'll be setting up short calls with your offices to introduce you to the platform in a little bit more depth. Once the dashboard is shared to you, to your email, you'll be able to access it at any time.
And so that was actually the first question we had from someone is this available now, or when is it going to be available? It will be available very soon. And if you're particularly interested in getting your university off on this right away, just send us an email and we can make sure that you're one of the first ones that we schedule these calls with, because we really do want to run through it with the university. and with the licensing folks at the tech commercialization office to make sure that it's understood how it works and what it means. And it really is meant to be a kind of two-way communication tool as well between OUP and your academic institution. The second question that we had, Natasha, was what are your primary sources for populating the metrics in the university startup tracker?
Yeah, that's a great question. Primary source, there's two primary sources here. So one is going to be our OUP's internal tracking database, which we track thousands of startups in our Salesforce database. We're constantly updating the information. The second source is going to be PitchBook. So we subscribe to PitchBook, and we also have a PitchBook plugin in our Salesforce database for each company. So some of the information we'll be pulling directly from PitchBook and not from fields that we manually enter ourselves.
Great. And I don't think we have any other questions at this time. So if you want to, and then I will share my screen again. It's going to take me just a second, Jamie, to put it back into presentation mode. So we will go there, and hopefully you guys are going to see the right screen. Are you guys seeing the right one? Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Good. All right. So thank you so much, Natasha. And yeah, if anyone else has questions on the startup tracker, startup company tracker, let us know. But we will be rolling this out, and we're really excited about it and hope it is a great resource for your institutions. So now Jamie's going to talk about participation rights, and since I did a very cursory job, get much more into detail about participation rights, especially for those who are new to them.
Yeah. So as Kirsten mentioned, participation rights really a cornerstone of OUP's investment model. So we actively track and manage participation right information that you send us. But first, to take a step back, why should you include participation rights? Participation rights provide all shareholders, including the university, a fair mechanism to protect against dilution by allowing shareholders to participate in future financing. And that's really on the same terms and conditions as other investors. Participation rights exercised by OUP allow the university to share in OUP's investment profit. And then even if a university does not own equity, percentage participation rights can offer the university an opportunity to participate in the equity upside of your startups. And then participation rights maximize the chances OUP is going to invest in your startup. And that's because we focus tracking and diligence on companies with participation rights. And participation rights ensure OUP can invest in companies of interest. We do invest in companies that do not have participation rights in their licenses. And that's because we've worked really hard at developing great relationships with your startups and with other investors that help contribute us getting into financing rounds. But participation rights ensure us a seat at the table.
Yeah. And one other thing I'm going to mention just there, Jamie, is that, obviously we're focusing on OUP and potentially investing through participation rights, because that's what our model was founded on. And as you mentioned, sometimes we don't invest through participation rights. It ends up being part of the relationship that we have, et cetera. It always ends up being part of the relationship, even if there are participation rights, whether we invest in the deal. But the universities these days too are looking at their own investment opportunities as well, and participation rights may be significant to them as well because of their own models. So
yeah, definitely. And as Kirsten mentioned, for core partners, you can invest 50-50 with us utilizing the participation right. So this is the standard participation rights language. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but I do want to talk about 4 points. First is that light blue point. That's the participation right. That's how much we can purchase in the round of financing. Second is the yellow, which is the notification. We ask that you include 30 days advance written notice of a financing in your participation right clause, but we understand sometimes you get some pushback about that. We could drop that down to 20 days, but we really need adequate time to review the opportunity. We're probably talking to the startup already, but it gives us opportunity to get any updates and make a decision. Next is assignability. You want to make sure the participation rights assignable to OUP or another entity like those funds at your university. And then last but not least is survivability. You really want to make sure that the participation right survives the termination of the agreement. And that really allows OUP or your own university fund to optimize the round of financing due to the company's traction.
We had a question, Jamie. What size round are participation rights triggered?
Well, it depends on the language. We suggest that you put 10% participation rate in your clauses. So that would mean at any round that is raised after the signing of the license that we would have the ability to purchase 10%.
Right. And there are sometimes where if people are concerned, well, should it be start at a certain point of financing or should it end at a certain point of financing? Because we're looking at opportunities, as we showed you earlier, for anywhere from seed to pre-IPO. We'd rather not have those bounds, but obviously our greatest interest tends to be those seed and Series A rounds. But that's our preference. But it's something that we can definitely talk more with you about, especially. And one of the things we encourage you is if you're in negotiation and people are asking about that, to come and talk to us, and we can discuss what those might look like.
And we're always open to talking with your startup company about OUP, about participation rights, and help address any of those concerns.
Yeah.
Okay. So we actively track participation right clause language and financing notifications. And that really helps us know when the investment opportunity may be. And then your individual university statistic will appear on the participation rights metric page of your deal log. And as you can see for the chart on this slide, we receive multiple participation right clauses and notifications a year, and they have been increasing. So thank you. Thank you for including clauses in your licenses. And in the past, in the before times, before COVID, we used to send chocolates to our partner institutions when they would send us their participation right clause language. Obviously, that's not something we've been doing for the past 2 years, but instead we've been donating the cost of those chocolates to No Kid Hungry. And ultimately, out of this participation rights section of this webinar, if you can, two things stick. First, please include participation rights in your licenses. And second, please send us your participation right clauses and financing notifications. We actively track these. And then we also do in-depth analysis every year of the clauses we receive, which goes into the next slide.
I'm just going to mention how important those are to our investment team, just so that they know when they're talking with a company, what the possibility may be with working with them. And we realize it's not always going to be the case exactly how it turns out, but it is really helpful to us. So thank you. Sorry, Jamie.
No, that's okay. Yeah, so I wanted to give you an idea of some of the analysis that we do. I do want to mention that we're going to do a webinar in December that's going to be a deep dive on participation rights. So you'll see a little bit more of the analysis we do and learn a little bit more about participation rights then. So, please tune in. But here's a little just taste of what we do, the analysis we do. And in this slide, we're looking at the participation rate. So if you remember, 2 slides ago, that light blue section, which is the right, how much we can purchase in a round. We suggest that you include 10% participation rate in your clauses. So we wanted to look in 2020, the clauses that we received for companies in 2020, how many of them had 10% participation rates in their clauses. And as you can see, the majority of them do. In 2020, 75% of the clauses were percentage, and 71% of those 75% were 10%. So the majority of them do. So thank you for getting 10% participation rate clauses in your license. And then last but not least, the one thing I wanted to mention was some lessons learned we've learned about participation rights. The first one is to let the licensee know as early as possible that there's going to be a participation right in the license. If your office utilizes term sheets or option agreements, it's helpful to include just a short notation about participation rights in those documents. And something like the sentence on this slide suffice. And then for core partners, we found that including the email notices at oup.vc to the notice section of your license agreements, or some include it directly into their clause language, help improve the information sharing with your licensees about potential participation opportunities in your companies. And I just want to mention why we're saying core partners here and not associate partners. Core partners, if you remember, Kirsten mentioned, pre-assigned their participation rights to us. where associate partners do not. So that's why we suggest this for core partners. So do we have any other questions on participation rates?
No more open questions. Yeah, thank you so much, Jamie.
And now we're going to turn the time over to Natasha to talk about how we assist your startups.
Great, thanks, Jamie. So what I wanted to talk about here is, we obviously do what we do in our programming to help your offices in your tech transfer practices. But we want everyone to know that OUP also works to help the startups themselves at your institutions, even if we're not investing in them. So one way we do this is through our introductions. We make a lot of different types of introductions. So we help spinouts find funding, locate management teams or potential CEOs for their companies, build partnerships with corporations. And because of our unique position in tracking thousands of university technologies, we're able to help companies find complementary technologies at other universities and match those. And that's something we've been doing more of late. We also maintain dialogues with a lot of other VCs, also corporations, strategics, entrepreneurs, anyone who's interested in our deal flow, since our deal flow is unique to university startups. So we do capture, as I've mentioned, all of our startup tracking in our sophisticated database, which allows us to easily match and connect a company with a relevant investor or partner, since we don't only track companies in our database, but also contacts and all these different types of potential contacts for your companies. And then research engagement. So our investment team engages with PIs even before a startup is formed to explore if their research could be turned into a startup. So our investment team helps PIs find management teams for their companies, identify market opportunities, and write business plans for a potential startup. So if you have a PI who could benefit from talking to an investor at this stage in their research, then please connect them to OUP and feel free to use that office hours scheduling form to do so. And then lastly on here, something that OUP is doing more of is helping form companies, so startup formation, and providing seed capitals to those companies. So we learned about new technologies early through our relationships with all of you and our engagement with academics and PIs. So we're in a unique position to form companies around these technologies by both finding the management team and then providing the seed capital to launch these companies. So company formation it's not the majority of what we do, but it's something OUP has done more recently and we plan to do more of in the future. And then the next slide here just elaborates a bit on introductions that we've made. So these are VCs we've recently introduced university startup opportunities to. And as you saw on the university startup tracker, the dashboard, we do track introductions, and we will be reporting on these in more detail. So we'll be reporting the specific companies that we make introductions for and who we introduce that company to, rather than just reporting on a number of introductions we made.
Great. Thanks, Natasha.
Yeah.
We don't have any questions on that, but we do actually have a question that's back on participation rights again. And I'm going to go into it quickly. And Jamie, I'm going to ask you to add anything, based on my answer. So the question is, do you have any data on deals that fail based on participation rights requests? So I think there's two ways to take this question. One is whether the participation right ever stops a deal from actually being signed, the language in there. So we work with the universities and we work with the startups to explain participation rights. It's on the same terms and conditions as all the other investors, et cetera. But a participation right should never make a deal not happen. That should not be the case. And so I've been now with OUP for almost 6 years. I have not seen a deal fail. because a participation right was included or not included in the license, or the license never failed itself. And participation rights are obviously not required in the licenses, but they are something that really we don't think should be objectionable, because again, the right to participate is on the same conditions as all of the investors who are investing in that round. And it is a potential benefit to the university to include those rights. And then as far as once they are in the license, and perhaps the company is raising funding and the other investors are concerned about the participation right, we always suggest people to come and talk to us. As this particular slide shows, we work with most of the other investors that are out there. We have probably worked with them on deals at some point, et cetera. So we know them. We haven't seen, but at the same time, one of the things I wanted to say was that, if a round has come together, you want all of the people who are investing in that round to be comfortable with that round and who's investing and who's going to be a partner with this company, et cetera. And so we try to work well, obviously, with all other VCs, so they are comfortable to have us as an investor. And we know that's part of our work as well. Jamie, anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, and I'm gonna go piggyback off of that a little bit and mention that, sometimes during a negotiation, we have our standard template language, but you'll get some pushback on that. And there's ways to modify that. We have some common ways to modify it in our partner portal, whether that's, including a funding threshold or having the PR clause survive to a particular amount. You can see some suggestions of language we have. And then anytime you have questions when it comes to participation rights, through any point of your negotiations, especially if you're adding some of these additions to it, please reach out to Kirsten, anyone on our team, anyone on the investment team, to get some feedback on those changes.
Thanks, Jamie. Great. Now, we know we've already gone a bit over our time that we had originally scheduled for this, but we will be done within by the hour. We just have a few more slides that we wanted to, because we had mentioned that we would talking about this as well. However, we do have one other question. I always want to make sure we answer the questions that come in. So the question was, what inspired creating a researcher account type in Partner Portal? Natasha, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. This came about based on conversations with a lot of you, actually, a lot of licensing officers, people who work in new ventures in your offices, requesting resources for your researchers. And so a lot of people mentioned that they take material out of the portal and share it with their researchers anyway. And it would just be more convenient if they could direct their researchers directly to the portal to find information that could be helpful for them, that a VC firm could provide. And so the greater part of this year, we decided to put together that membership type and create additional content that would be useful for researchers.
Yeah. And one other thing I'll chime in with there is that actually, so a number of the researchers at your institution actually watch our webinars, and they've been asking to sign up for the portal. Like, I'd really like to have access to this information. So it's, and then you all have been telling us that too, as you've been finding information on there that you'd like to share it. So multiple sources.
That's great.
So, yeah.
It's a great point, Kirsten.
And it's again, this is again, you all have asked for things. We're trying to respond to things that you're requesting. So hopefully that's useful. All right. So in the next just few minutes, we'll talk about our process. So we are so thankful to be partnered with so many terrific institutions, around 100 academic institutions across the world. Between your academic institutions, we're currently tracking about 7,000 active startup companies. In 2020, we had interactions with 1,500 of those companies. So that just gives you an idea of how much our investment team is doing with regards to actually talking with these companies, following up with them. So 1,500 different companies we interacted with in 2020. 129 of those companies entered our diligence process. So we kind of have these levels of where we're looking at companies, and then we have a kind of a formal entry into our diligence process. So 129 of them entered our diligence process in 2020, and 12 of those made it to the point of first-time investments. We also in the same year made 20 follow-on investments, which is also quite a bit of work, as you may know, for a venture fund, is making those decisions. Okay, are we going to make an additional investment in a company that we've already made an investment in? What will that amount be? How much are they raising? Where are they at, et cetera? So there's a lot of analysis and tracking and understanding the science and the team and the company and what they're doing that our investment team is working on when they're looking at these investments, possible investments for our portfolio. And it all originates with you, with the tech commercialization offices that we work with. So this is just an idea of where we sourced the companies that are in our database. So the vast majority of what we're sourcing are from the tech transfer offices themselves. So each year we are very thankful for you providing us updates on companies, as well as telling us about new companies. And so we hope that Smartsheet tracker will be a new way that you can also let us know about companies. Our investment team also does a lot of reading. They're looking at what's coming out of your institution. So reading a lot of different sources about the research and the startups that are coming out. Obviously, we've been around for a while as well now, and VCs often are coming to us now and telling us about potential deals that they think could be of interest to us. And then we've just jumping down to the last column here. Obviously, we try to do a good job of being good partners with the PIs at your institutions and the researchers at your institutions. And so sometimes we're finding out about startups directly from them when they're starting to think about a startup as well. This is just to understand and to reiterate the point about how long we track deals. We track deals over a long period. So we don't just look at something and say, we're not interested, we're done. We are tracking deals and we want to know about them early because we want to understand them early. So that at the point when they are raising, we can make a good informed decision that is hopefully quite quick on whether to make that investment. And we may know about that deal fairly early. We may look at it and we may actually decide not to invest in that first round. We may want to be seeing some other things that are happening with it. So we're going to continue tracking it. Maybe we'll invest in a future round if we see some things that change with it. As this particular chart notes that 50% of the active startups that we're looking at have been around for more than 3 years. In our database, and we're always looking for new startups, but know that we're going to look at them over time. Sometimes things come into our database, or that you notify us about things. We make an investment within those first few months, but it also may take a lot longer than that. And so we want to be very realistic about that, but also for you to understand that we do look at things over time. And with that, I know we just have a couple of minutes left. I don't think we have any additional questions. I do want to note that this is the contact information for Jamie, Natasha, and me. And feel free to reach out to us with questions. We are so thankful to be partners with each of you. We love your enthusiasm of working with us. We really enjoy working with you. I know it's one of the favorite things that everyone who's on our team says why they like working at OUP is because they love working with the tech commercialization offices and with the academic institutions that we're partnered with. So thank you for your partnership. Thank you for joining us today. Please follow up if you have any questions. And I'd also really like to thank Natasha and Jamie for joining today and talking about our programs and participation rights.
Yep. And I just pasted a link to our survey, as we always send out a survey at the end of our webinar. So if you have a moment and can fill that out for us, that would be terrific.
No, yeah. And I would like to just mention with regards to the survey is that we do base a lot of actually our future webinars based on your responses to these surveys. So thank you again. With that, we will sign off and wish everyone a terrific day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.